All right, folks, today I am joined by Emile Hirsch, whose new film Walden was released in theaters late last month. Thank you so much for your time today, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm curious if the director gave you an indication of what light he was going to portray this guy in, or were you kind of left to make that determination on your own? Because I think he's obviously, as most vigilantes are, doing a bad thing, but at least in his head for the right reason. So was it up to you to sort of figure out the tone of this guy?
Mick had written a really cool script. And it was sort of a thing where when I first read it, yeah, I was kind of like, well, I'm not really exactly sure. I knew that there was probably like the right formula way to play Walden, but I wasn't really sure what that was. So there was a version of what I was working on that I would say was like the more traditional version of Walden, where it was a little bit more straightforward. It wasn't, it was kind of like a pared down version. And I kind of like I hit a roadblock where I was like, there's just something missing here. Like I was like, it, guys that like go off the deep end like this are like they're not really the straight guy. You know what I mean? In the movie, it's like it was like he felt too normal. He felt not, he didn't feel like eccentric enough. Um, and also it was the early kind of version that I had been working on. There was a certain lack of fun and exuberance to what he was doing. So I sort of went back to the drawing board, and Mick had kind of like he sort of told me early on, he really challenged me. He said, I want you to come up with this character. And it was a little bit of like pressures on you because he wanted to, I think it was like a challenge. He wanted him to be, to do everything in the script and to say everything, but let's just put it this way. He put a lot of pressure on me to find the exact Walden because he's kind of mystical in the sense where he's like, when you found it, you'll know. So I kind of I thought about it, and I kind of just like did the divining rod search for Walden, and there were a couple of kind of jumping off points that kind of occurred to me throughout the process. Was like, man, I really I really love Philip Seymour Hoffman in Capote.
Mhm.
And I went, man, he had a really unique voice in that. So I don't think that you can have a really unique voice in a movie like this, even though there's comedic elements to the character. Capote was still one of my favorite dramas. And then I thought, and I worked with Sean Penn on Milk, and Sean played that in such an exuberant, fun way. And I was like, and I loved what he did. So I sort of said, there's also a certain kind of exuberance to Walden. And there was also like an uptight nature um to Walden that I kind of like sort of felt was kind of like Ned Flanders on The
Yeah, I
Simpsons.
can see that. Yeah, absolutely.
And like Oakley Dokley, but when Flanders gets pissed, he's like scary,
Yeah.
like Flanders gets mad. And there was also I'd watched like 7 seasons of SpongeBob SquarePants with my son. And there was just something funny about Like
Wow, I could see that connection now so much that you say that.
Walden is almost like a mix of Squidward and SpongeBob. Um, and it was like,
Knowing the context of this film, that's so ridiculous. Like
and
who the
like,
character is, and you saying that, it's amazing.
and like, but like, it was like, I kind of like just fused all these guys together. And I was like, those were sort of my influences, you could say. And then I was sort of playing around, and all of a sudden, I like kind of like the DNA of Walden just snapped in. And I was like, whoa, like this doesn't feel, it didn't feel like any one of those things. It
Hmm.
felt like it felt like you put it in the blender and suddenly it's like a new creation. But the new creation felt distinctly Walden. And I was like, man, I was like hysterically laughing. Like when Walden, when I like took the top off the pot and Walden was there, I was like laughing, dude. And I remember I was in like one of those like Dr. Evil chairs in my trailer. It was like just a turning chair. And my son and my nephew were in there and they were like literally like playing video games. And I like turned around and I started like doing like Walden for them, and they started like hysterically laughing. And I was like, okay, this is that dude. This is the
Well,
dude.
dude, more so than the voice that you came up with is that face that you do. I don't know how the hell you like where you're like giving people this kind of the stink eye the whole time. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's weird. It's like I had certain like data sets that were my inspirations. And then it was like once I had like the core DNA of Walden, as we went along, he kind of got bigger, and it was like he sort of just grew into what he was. But like the core DNA, I knew that that was it. I was like, that's it. And
You
then
know, oh sorry.
other than that, I couldn't even tell you how else it sort of grew, you know?
You know, just hearing you talk now, it also reminds me of a certain take on the Joker, who there was this whole thing where he says like all it takes is one bad day to turn anyone into me. And that is
Yeah.
sort of yeah, and that is sort of what this guy goes through. So this role is it forces you to be very reflectively dark, right? Because you are trying to process what it would be like for a regular guy to reach that point. And while you were getting in that mindset, did you find like do you think that he was always in his heart of hearts that sort of violent pent up guy, or do you think anybody and everybody can become like that under the right circumstances or wrong circumstances?
I mean, I would hope that not anybody and everybody would become like that guy, just because in the real world, you don't want people doing stuff like that. That's
No, of
terrible. But
course
in a
not.
movie, things are a little different. Um, and I don't. I think that the we have an innate love of vigilantism, and humans have that basic sense of unfairness. Somebody cuts you in line, you're not mad because you're waiting 20 more seconds in line. You're mad that like they're cutting everyone.
Right.
It's just inherently wrong. um Obviously it's unfair. And I think that within Walden's case, was he always capable of that? I don't know. He gets a meningioma, a brain tumor, and it kind of, it we're a little bit left in the dark as to how much this is altering his brain chemistry or the shape of
Yeah.
his neocortex. There's been arguments to make that people have very strange behavior when they've got huge tumors, pushing
Yeah.
around in their brain. Um, I don't know. I mean, that's open a little bit up to interpretation, I would say.
Yeah.
It's like, was it the brain tumor or was it not? I think that I think in Walden's case, he feels so incredibly justified, you know. He's not feeling too guilty.
Yeah, I know. I know.
I mean, after the first killing scene, there's a shot in Walden where, he's in bed and he's got his hands behind his head and he's like, I mean, he's like laughing in pleasure. It's like
Yeah.
he couldn't have been happier about what he did,
Yeah.
which is
I
hilarious for some reason. I don't know why. It's like you watch that and like the audience laughs when they see that because they're almost like they can't believe he's so unrepentant.
So I want to shift now to truly one of my favorite films of all time. You could see it over my shoulder, Once Upon
Oh
a
yeah.
Time in Hollywood. Dude, you're fourth on the call sheet on that, which I think is a very cool thing. Behind three of the biggest stars in town. So congrats on that.
All
Um,
right.
Talk to me how that role came to you. Did you have to audition for it or what?
So, I had met Quentin over the years at the Cannes Film Festival, at a dinner that UTA threw years before, and they had actually sat me next to Quentin, and we had a wonderful conversation, and we were like spitballing. I had like some sci-fi movie idea, and then Quentin started like spitballing, ideas on top that were amazing, and we had like a good crazy rant that lasted until they kicked us out of the restaurant at like midnight or whatever. We
Those are
we
the
were
best
having
nights.
Yeah, we had a blast. And we liked each other. You like chit chatting with someone, and I was as far as actors goes, I was probably one that like was cool because I was like a movie nerd growing up who like lived in the rental store. So I'd seen a lot more movies, at least back then too, especially than a lot of people have. I'm one of these actors that's like a little bit more of like a movie fan. I almost started more as like the guy in the video store than a lot of actors honestly probably did. So we kind of had that in common. But I hadn't talked to him in years. And I was working kind of, I don't know what I was working on at the time. I might have been working on a movie called Freaks or something. I might have been working on Freaks in Vancouver with and I just got a message on Facebook from Quentin. And I'm not even Facebook friends with Quentin. I don't even use Facebook anymore. No offense, Facebook. I don't use you anymore. This was like 6 years ago. This is like the tail end of face people like me using Facebook.
Right.
And it was like message request from Quentin Tarantino. And I was like, what? And it was like a fake. It was like a fake. It wasn't like even his picture on the avatar. And he said something like, "Hey, I saw Autopsy of Jane Doe."
Oh, dude,
And
I spoke to Andre this year. I loved that movie.
yeah, that movie, Andre's really good. Like Andre crushed that movie, and that was like Brian Cox right before he did Succession. Like he was
Yep.
like awesome.
So sorry, go ahead.
And Quentin basically said, you know, I really liked Jane Doe, and I'm working on a project. There might be something for you in this. There's a part that there might be something for you. And I was like, and first off, I'm looking at it being like, if this is some catfish 15-year-old in his mom's basement in Iowa, like I'm gonna get on a Greyhound bus and get this dude. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, talk about like cranking the shit out of an actor, being like, "Oh, I'm
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino. I've got a role for you." You know what I mean? Like that's like the most. It's like the most evil thing you could do.
Exactly.
Um, but I looked and I saw that one of his mutual friends was like another director that we both knew. And I was like, did he get tricked too? Or this kind of legitimizes it a little bit. And it was like a process of like it was like almost I want to say like 8 or 9 months before he even had me come in and meet. So I would get like a message like every 3 or 4 months. And he'd be like, "Oh, I'm still working on it." And, I don't know. But like, he didn't tell me what the part was. He didn't tell me what the movie was even about. So then I heard rumors that it was about, Charles Manson at first. And, I'm 5'7", and I was like, does he think, does he want me to play Charles Manson? And I was like, I was like, Charles Manson? And I was like, what? And
I could see it though. I'm not, I could with the beard and the hair you've got now.
and well, thank you. And no, and then I was talking to a buddy of mine who was involved in the film, and he was like, no, 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 it's not Manson. I go, not Manson. He goes, no, no, it's a hairdresser. I go, a hairdresser? Like, it's the opposite of Manson, right?
As far as it could be, yeah.
So I go home and I look up that and I see Jay Sebring and I look and I go, oh my gosh, like I could definitely play this guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I look like this guy. We're the same freaking height. It was like crazy. And it was funny because I was like, it made a lot of sense because the picture that I saw of Jay, I mean, it was like the exact look that I had in the autopsy of Jane Doe. So I imagine, Quentin's watching the movie, you know, with Eli Roth or, whoever, one of his buddies, and I come on and it's like, boom, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Because it was like just that. And working with Quentin was one of the best experiences I've ever had with any director, any creative, seeing his creativity and his genius. And I was on that film for a while. Because the way that my scene sort of went and the way it was scheduled, I was on that film for, I want to say, 5 months.
Yeah.
So I
Wow.
I really and Quentin me and Quentin shared a two banger, which was great. Um so it was like Quentin on one half and me on the other. And it was really inspiring getting to be around someone that is like on that level, and who was just always, me and certain actors or crew members, we would get into like, nerdy film discussions sometimes. And Quentin would be like an addict who was like jonesing, and he'd like
He'd
he'd
sniff it
be work
out. Yeah.
he'd be working on the film and like setting up a shot, and then he'd hear something about movies that we were talking about, and he'd be like, no, no, what are you guys talking about? And we'd be like, oh, we were just talking about like 2001 and Kubrick movies. And he'd be like, oh, okay. And he'd need to get like his fix of like movie discussions, and then he'd like go back to work. But it was funny because we were just constantly just having a great time. Having a great time. It was really cool. And also, I learned a lot about how, you know, he's really like, he's so friendly and he's such a loving guy, but he also like, there's a reason why every element of all of his movies are good. There's a reason why so many of these wonderful directors, they don't, you'll work with directors and they're like, oh man, yeah, our production value and we didn't get this, and oh yeah, that what happened with the costumes, or oh yeah, what happened with this. Quentin and these masters,
They
the
got it
one
on
of the
lock.
reasons why they're great is they don't allow any element to not be what they want.
Yeah.
And like, you look at Darren Aronofsky's first movie, Pie, it's awesome. Like, you see the talent. It's just there. He didn't let any kind of money or production limitation prevent him from making a great film. And it's a, you know, it's a relentlessness that you kind of have, especially when you have in film, when you have so many different moving pieces and so many different departments, and it's like every part of the machine has to be there. Every part to really make a great film, they all have to be clicking. They all have to be in sync. If one's off, the machine breaks down.
Right, exactly. All right, man. I've got to wrap here. I just want to ask you really, really quick. How much do you get asked about Alpha Dog? Do you get asked about that film a lot?
You know what's crazy is I don't get asked about it in interviews necessarily, but it's a film that like people, they'll stop me on the street and they bring up Alpha Dog.
Exactly. Exactly. It hit this pocket at the time it came out, and I rewatched it for the first time in 10 years, and let me tell you, it holds up. Great fucking movie, man.
I mean, that movie, if you really think about that movie, I'm 19 in that movie.
And you play such a great scumbag. It's unbelievable. You're so
Everybody
scary.
else, though, what was hilarious about it was everybody else, they were like in their 20s. They were like 23, 20. Like I was like the baby on the set that
And yet
had
you
to
still
come
were like, and yet you
and
still
boss
felt like the
everybody
man.
around. And these
Yeah.
were actors that were like, this kid's like way younger than me. And I'd be like, oh, man, sorry, I got to do this. And they'd be like, action. I'd be like, get on your knees.
All right, man. Thank you so much. Congrats on a great career. Going through your films, you've been in a tons of shit that I just love, dude.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Take care, brother.
Bye bye.
Cheers, everybody.